Hello everyone, in our heat transfer lecture series, again in this lecture we are going to discuss about the convection heat transfer, that means fundamentals of the convection heat transfer. So in previous lecture we have seen the physical mechanism of convection heat transfer. In that we have seen if there is a bulk motion of a fluid available over the solid surface and heat transfer takes place, it is called as convection heat transfer. If there is no bulk motion into the fluid, then heat transfer is considered as a conduction heat transfer. So convection heat transfer are classified into two types. The first one is forced convection, in which the fluid is moved over a solid surface by forcefully by using any external devices like pumps, fan, blower, etc. So this is called the forced convection. And if the fluid motion over a solid surface is available due to the density difference, it is called as natural convection. Then we have seen if convection in the convection heat transfer, the rate of heat transfer is always higher as compared to the conduction heat transfer. Here we see the Newton's law of cooling. So Newton's law of cooling is mainly derived for the convection heat transfer. Okay. So from that we have defined the convection heat transfer coefficient. H is the rate of heat transfer between the solid surface and the fluid per unit surface area per unit temperature difference. Then we have seen the boundary layer formation. In the boundary layer formation, no slip condition and boundary layer. So in no slip condition, where due to the viscosity effect, the fluid always in contact with the solid surface, there is no motion into that fluid. It is called as no slip condition. Above the no slip condition, the velocity distribution will be takes place, or velocity gradually goes on increasing up to the mainstream velocity. This is called as boundary layer formation. So boundary layer formation and the no slip condition are mainly depend upon the viscosity of the fluid. Then we have seen the in no slip condition how to find out the rate of heat transfer. So obviously in no slip condition there is no motion into the fluid, so that's why we can find out the heat transfer rate by the conduction. So this is by using Fourier law of conduction. And if you can compare this conduction heat transfer with the heat transfer from no slip condition layer to the adjacent boundary layer. So in the boundary layer, obviously the fluid is in motion, and that's why heat transfer takes place from no slip layer to the adjacent layer. It is by convection. Okay. So if you compare these two, we will find out the rate of heat transfer coefficient, and this is find out by using the Fourier law divided by the temperature difference from solid surface to the mainstream velocity of the fluid. Okay. And the average heat transfer coefficient, the convection heat transfer coefficient in general varies along the flow in each direction. The average or mean convection heat transfer coefficient for a surface in such cases is determined by properly averaging the local convection heat transfer coefficient over the entire surface AS or the length X. So if you consider the surface area and the heat transfer coefficient is different at different area, so that's why we will require always a average heat transfer coefficient, and this is find out by using taking integration over a surface or taking integration over a length. Okay. Now, so in the convection heat transfer, the study is find out by using William Nusselt, and this is a German engineer, and he did a lots of study in the convection heat transfer on the non-dimensionalized numbers. Okay, we'll see one by one. So here the Nusselt number. On the name of William Nusselt, the dimensionless number have given name as a Nusselt number. In the convection study, it is common practice to non-dimensionalize the governing equation and combine the variables which group together into dimensionless numbers in order to reduce the number of total variables. Okay. So here in the governing equation, just like energy balance equation, then momentum equation, and uh, mass conversion mass equation, In that we will do a bunch of numbers or parameters into a one form, and we will form a dimensionless numbers. So that's why we have given the numbers as dimensionless numbers. So in that, one of the number is Nusselt number. So Nusselt number we have taken, just we consider a layer, a fluid layer, which is at one side temperature is T1 and second side temperature is T2, which is available at a distance L. If there is no motion is available and heat transfer takes place from T2 to T1, then conduction heat transfer will take place. And if in the same example, if fluid is available in motion, then convection heat transfer takes place from topmost layer to the bottommost layer. So as compared to the rate of heat transfer, so if motion is available into the fluid, we will find out the heat transfer by the convection, and if there is no motion is available into the fluid, we will find out the heat transfer by conduction. If you compare to and if you take a ratio of a convection heat transfer to the conduction heat transfer, we have H delta T divided by K delta T by L, and if you simplify this one, we will get HL by K, and this HL by K is defined as the Nusselt number. So Nusselt number is ratio of heat transfer coefficient multiplied with characteristics length to the thermal conductivity of the fluid. So here LC is a characteristics length. Okay. The Nusselt number represents enhancement of heat transfer through a fluid layer as a result of convection relative to conduction across the same fluid layer. Okay. So this is the ratio of convection heat transfer to the conduction heat transfer. Larger the Nusselt number, the more effective the convection. Okay. So what will happen? If you see about the formula of Nusselt number, larger the Nusselt number, obviously if number goes on increasing, Nusselt number goes on increasing, it is directly proportional to the heat transfer coefficient. If you consider characteristic length and thermal conductivity will be constant, that means Nusselt number is directly proportional to the heat transfer coefficient. If Nusselt number goes on increasing, obviously heat transfer coefficient also goes on increasing. So if heat transfer goes on increasing, we can find out that heat transfer rate goes on increasing. So that means the larger the Nusselt number, the more effective the convection. A Nusselt number of Nu is equal to 1 for a fluid layer represent the heat transfer across the layer by pure conduction. Okay. So if you taking it is at by 1, Nusselt number is 1, then obviously convection heat transfer rate is equal to conduction heat transfer. So that's why we will find out it is a pure conduction. That means there is no motion into the fluid. Now we'll see here some examples of the convection heat transfer. Convection in the daily life. So first, we turn on the fan on hot summer days to help our body cool more effectively. The higher the fan speed, the better the we feel. So in summer condition, we will require the cool conditions. So for that we use the fan. If we increase the speed of fan, obviously we feel the better. We stir our soup and blow on a hot slice of pizza to make them cool or faster. So to cool the hot beverages and food, always we blow the air over that food and we will make that food becomes a cold. The air on a windy winter days feels much colder than it actually is. So obviously, if air air velocity goes on increasing, heat transfer rate goes on increasing, and that's why we feel a cold. The simplest solution to heating problems in the electronic packaging is to use a large enough fan. So to transfer the heat from the electrical devices or electronic devices, we will use a large fans. So this is what the example of blowing off air over a fluid to cool the food. Okay. Now we'll see the classification of fluid flows. So in that, first classification is viscous versus inviscid region of the flow. What do you mean by viscous flow? Viscous flow in which the frictional effects are significant. That means if viscosity of the fluid comes into the picture, and due to the viscosity, if fluid flow over a surface, solid surface, obviously there will their friction will be takes place into the fluid and the solid surface. So that's why viscous flow is that if viscosity will be comes into picture, and due to that frictional effect takes place into the solid surface and the fluid. In viscid fluid regions, in many flow of a practical interest, there are regions, typically regions not close to the solid surface, where the viscous forces are negligibly small as compared to the inertial or pressure forces. Look, if you see in the example, if you take in, this is a solid plate, and over the solid plate, due to the viscosity effect, what will happen? No slip condition and boundary layer formation will be takes place, and this is due to the viscosity, and this is called as a viscous flow. Okay, and above the viscous flow, if you see here, the region of the fluid, this is, in that what will happen, the viscous force are negligibly small as compared to the inertial force or pressure force. That means velocity will be higher. So that's why that's why this region will consider as a inviscid flow. Okay, the flow over a originally uniform fluid stream over a flat plate, and the regions of a viscous flow next to the plate on the both side, and the inviscid flow away from the plate. Okay, we will consider this is as a viscous flow versus inviscid flow. Next is internal versus external flow. So first we'll see about the external flow. The flow of an unbounded fluid over a surface such as a plate, a wire or a pipe, it is considered as an external flow. Okay, that means flow, external flow. If a fluid flow over a surfaces, then it is considered as an external flow. And internal flow, the flow in a pipe or duct, if the fluid is completely bounded by a solid surface, then it is considered as an external flow. So example is the fluid flow through the pipe. Okay. Next, the water flow in a pipe is the internal flow, and air flow over a ball is the external flow. So these are the examples. The flow of liquids in a duct is called as open channel flow if the duct is only partially filled with the liquid and there is a free surface. So in the duct, if fluid is flowing and it is not completely filled, some portion is partially filled, then this type of flow is considered as open channel flow. So here we have the example, ball, if a tennis ball is moving into the air, then what will happen? The air flowing over this solid ball, then it is considered as the external flow. Now next is compressible versus incompressible flow. So first we'll see about the incompressible flow. If the density of the flowing fluid remains nearly constant throughout the fluid flow, it is considered as incompressible flow. So examples are, if liquids are flowing, it is considered as an incompressible fluid. Now about the compressible flow, if the density of the fluid changes during the flow, it is considered as a compressible flow. So if you consider about the example of air or the gases, so in that density of the flow is going to change, it is considered as a compressible flow. When analyzing rockets, spacecraft and other systems that involves high speed gas flow, the flow speed is often expressed by the Mach number. So in the compressible fluid flow, so we have stated that if there is a gas flow is available, then we will consider it as a compressible flow. So then it is depend upon a Mach number. So what is Mach number? Mach number is defined as the local velocity, or it is called speed of the flow, to the speed of sound or sonic velocity. Okay. If Mach number is equal to 1, then the speed of the flow is equal to speed of sound. So this flow is called as sonic flow. If Mach number is less than 1, that means then some speed of sound is higher compared to the speed of flow. In that, this is called as subsonic flow. And if Mach number is greater than 1, then obviously speed of the flow will be higher than speed of the sound. So it is called as supersonic flow. And if Mach number is much higher than the 1, in that it is called as hypersonic flow. So here what is C? C is the speed of the sound or sonic velocity, whose value is taken as 346 meter per second in air at a room temperature at a sea level. Gas flows can often be approximated as incompressible if the density changes are under about 5%, which is usually the case when Mach number is much less than 0.3. Okay. If you consider the density difference, density changes is less than the 5% and Mach number is less than 0.3, the gas flow is considered as an incompressible flow. Okay. So therefore, the compressibility effect of air can be neglected at the speeds under about 100 meter per second. If speed of the air is less than 100 meter per second, then compressibility will consider as a negligible. Okay, so this is our compressible versus incompressible fluid. Now laminar versus turbulent. Okay, so what is laminar flow? The highly ordered fluid motion characterized by smooth layers of the fluid. The flow of high viscosity fluids such as oils at a low velocity is typically laminar. So that means if layers of the fluid flow are parallel with each other during the flow, then this type of flow is considered as a laminar flow. If you take an example of the honey is flowing, then all the layers are parallel to each other, then it is considered as a laminar flow because honey is a highly viscous fluid. Okay. Now we'll see about the turbulent flow. So what about turbulent flow? The highly disordered fluid motion that typically occurs at a high velocity and is characterized by velocity fluctuation. The flow of low viscosity fluids such as air at a high velocity is typically as turbulent. So turbulent flow, so that means as compared to the laminar flow, in the turbulent flow, what will happen? Layers of the fluid during the flowing will be mixes with each other. Okay, during the high velocity, then such type of flow are considered as a turbulent flow. Okay, and so this is happen when velocity is so much higher and density of that fluid or viscosity is so much less, then in that turbulent flow will be takes place. And what about transitional flow? A flow that alternates between the being laminar and turbulent. So if you consider the example of the transitional flow, so previously if you see here this region is a laminar flow and after that the due to some variation or increasing the velocity, then laminar flow will be changes into the turbulent flow. When laminar flow changes into the turbulent flow, some of the regions it is considered as some part is laminar and some are the turbulent. So at that case the flow is considered as a transitional. That means laminar flow converted into turbulent flow, that at that region it is considered as a transitional flow. Okay. So this is about laminar versus turbulent flow. Now the natural or unforced versus the forced flow. Okay, as previously we have discussed natural flow and forced flow. So we will see about the forced flow. A fluid is forced to flow over a surface or in a pipe by external means such as pump or fan. Suppose fluid is flowing due to the forcing by external devices just like fan, pumps, blower, etc. So that type of flow is considered as a forced flow. And if now about the natural flow, fluid motion is due to the natural means such as the buoyancy effect, which manifests itself as a rise of warmer and thus lighter fluid and the fall of a cooler and thus the denser fluid. It is called the natural fluid. That means what will happen if temperature of the fluid will be increased, its viscosity, its density will be decreased, and if low dense air will be uh, higher in temperature, then what will happen? It will be buoyant in upward direction, and position of that fluid will be taken by a cold air which is a high dense, which is a denser. So that's why our cold fluid, then the fluid flow will be takes place like that. The warmer fluid will be moving upward direction and cold fluid moving in downward direction. Such type of flows are considered as a natural flows. So if you see here an example, okay, so in this cylinder image, the rise of the lighter warmer air adjacent to the her body indicates that human and warm blooded animals are surrounded by thermal plumes of rising warm air. If you see here, if cold air, atmospheric air is in contact with the human body, then then it will be rise in upward direction, and that's why it is called as natural flow. Okay. Now about the steady versus unsteady flow. The term steady implies that no changes at a point with time. The term steady implies that no changes at a point with time. If there is no change in the properties of the fluid flow with respect to time, then such type of flow is considered as a steady flow. That means velocity of a fluid flow does not change in respect to time. It is considered as a steady flow. Okay, this is the velocity will be always constant with respect to time. That means at the initial time and after some time. If you consider as time period 2 second, 2 minute, 1 hour, etc. At the same time, anytime, if your velocity will be same, then that type of flow is considered as a steady flow. The opposite of steady is unsteady. Okay, that means if the velocity of the fluid flow changes according to the time, it is considered as a unsteady flow. That means if you take an example that if water is flowing initially at a temperature 2 meter per second at a time is equal to 0, and after 2 second time same water will be flowing with a velocity higher than 2 meter second or less than 2 meter per second, then thus this type of flow is considered as an unsteady flow. The term uniform implies that no change with location over the specified region. If we consider the uniform flow, if velocity does not changes according to the distance into the flow, then such type of flow is considered as a uniform. The term periodic refers to the kind of unsteady flow in which the flow oscillates about the steady means. If periodic means if oscillation will be takes place into the steady means, then it is considered as a periodic flow. The many devices such as turbines, compressors, boilers, condensers, and heat exchangers operates for a long periods of time under the same condition, and they are classified as steady flow devices. Okay, so these devices are used for long periods of time. So these are devices considered as a steady flow devices. Now next one is 1, 2 and 3 dimensional flow. A flow field is best characterized by its velocity distribution. A flow is said to be 1 or 2 or 3 dimensional if the flow velocity varies in 1, 2 or 3 dimension respectively. So example is given as if velocity is changing, so velocity is taking place in one direction only, then it is considered as one dimensional flow. If velocity distribution will be taken as two dimensions just like x and y, then we will consider as a two dimensional, and if velocity will be taken into the three dimension, it is considered as a three dimensional flow. However, the variation of velocity in certain directions can be small relative to the variation in other direction and can be ignored. However, the variation of the velocity in certain directions can be small relative to the variation in other direction can be ignored. Suppose velocity of the flow will be takes place in x direction, and if y direction velocity will be negligible or small, then we will neglect the y direction velocity. Okay, if you see, now we see the example here, fully developed flow. The flow through the pipe or the internal flow, and the initially the flow will be higher, and what will happen at a center time due to viscous effect of the fluid, and the boundary layer formation will be takes place near to the surface, and that's why velocity at surface is 0, and after that velocity will be goes on increasing at the center. Okay, so this is called a fully developed flow. The development of the fluid velocity profile in a circular pipe, velocity is a function of the radial direction and z direction. So z direction is considered as the length of pipe, and thus the flow is two dimensional in the entrance region and becomes one dimensional downstream when the velocity profile fully develops and remains unchanged in the flow direction. So in that, what will happen at the start, velocity is totally two dimensional, but when fully developed flow is available, so in that, in radial direction in the z direction velocity will be negligible, but in radial direction it is higher. So that's why it is considered as the velocity is a function of radial direction. Okay, thank you.